Good morning and good afternoon. Thanks so much for joining us today. We're looking forward to walking you through some event registration ideas with a little bit of a bent towards Christmas and the festive season, and trying to make things a little bit more interesting, perhaps, in that process as well. So let's jump in. So, welcome, of course, and we just want to basically walk through a couple of points and then really kind of dive into Eloqua for the bulk of the meeting today. So certainly have your questions ready for us. First thing we want to do is look at Eloqua as a communication tool. And I say that more broadly than perhaps just a marketing tool, hence the point. So we'll expand on that. And looking at how potentially folks outside of the marketing team may also be able to take charge of some of the builds of different things they need to do, giving them the ability to organize some events, etc. Talk more about that and help you understand how that might be able to, or how you might be able to take a little bit of workload off you and share that across the team potentially. So let's have a look at that. We'll then look at some examples of creating a slightly more fun and engaging way to present the registration process to people in the context of an event and what that could look like, and automating your reminders and using that automation to try and get people to attend, obviously, and to get them to have some fun at your events. And of course, Q&A. So please feel free to ask questions as we progress through. But I'd like to an acknowledgement of country, and I begin today by acknowledging the Gadigal people, the traditional custodians of the land on which we broadcast from today, and pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples online with us today. So welcome, and welcome everybody. Just the usual housekeeping. So as you know, we use Zoom. Replays are always available via our blog, and you will receive an email with access to those. Please use the Q&A function throughout. You can upvote other questions that you see. And if you have a private question, of course, you can use the chat function to do that. And I've got Adrian Jones on the line with me today. So Adrian's manning the questions. So please feel free to drop some questions to him and keep him busy throughout the session. My name is Derek, and I'm your host for today. Okay, so let's jump in. So the broad concept of what we were trying to get across today is to help you understand how you can potentially have a bit more fun, hopefully for you as well, but primarily for your target audience, in how they register for the different events that you may host. Now, as we head towards the end of the year, our focus is primarily on in-person events. So this will be client parties for Christmas. It could be Thanksgiving if we're in the US. There could be a whole range of different reasons as to why we're hosting events and parties, dinners, functions, whatever they may be. Let's have a look at some suggestions. So the key thing that we know as we look towards email as a method of communicating to people is that it is by far the most common way that businesses and most organizations choose to communicate with people. It's economical, which is probably one of the key points. But it's more than just being economical. It's just primarily the way most of us seem to communicate. I know if I'm communicating with vendors from a personal point of view, whether it's the electrical company or different utility companies or whatever it might be, your email is my preferred choice. Maybe I'm a little bit biased in relation to that. But that generally seems to be the case for most of us. And so the numbers really speak for themselves. That if you're using email, that it does have an application beyond marketing. And that's part of the point that we want to try and get across today, that this is not just a marketing platform that you have available to you, that Eloqua really is a communication tool, hence the point being a communication tool and a communication platform. And there are people outside of the marketing team within your organization who potentially could benefit from using Eloqua as well. Now, typically, when we look at audiences, for most of us, we talk about two different types of audiences. We talk about prospects and we talk about customers. Now, depending on your world, that could be prospective students and it could be enrolled students. It could be prospective clients and it could be clients. There could be a whole range of different terms that you might use. But typically, for most organizations, outside of those two target groups that we might be talking to, There are others, and there are loads of others. There's staff, for one. There's you and I, right? There's you and I that parts of the business want to talk to. Maybe there are shareholders. Maybe there are partners, and those partners could be business partners, or they could be partners in a law firm. They could be anyone. So partners, staff could be similar. Various stakeholders. The list of stakeholders could go on forever. I didn't have enough icons for that one. Vendors. Maybe it's the people that supply your organization. Now, marketing may not be communicating to them, but maybe it's the other parts of the business, procurement, for example. Maybe they need to communicate and liaise with vendors on a regular basis for a range of different things. And you'll see down at the bottom left-hand corner, I've just said anyone. Okay, so by that I mean really at the end of the day, anyone that you need to communicate to as an organization, you've got a great tool that's sitting here called Eloqua that maybe is just primarily focused on marketing, but could in fact have multiple applications. So in your discussions with colleagues at the water cooler, and as you're spending time with them in different meetings, there is an opportunity potentially to look at how Eloqua could make that communication process a little bit easier. There is a document I'd like to share with you, and I'll share this with you via the blog. So for the October blog this month, you'll find a link to this document. And it's a great document. It really talks about how you can use Eloqua for internal communications, but you can take that same logic and expand it to external communication beyond the traditional marketing and marketing comms that you may do. So please have a look at that. I think it's a really good document. One of the key things that comes up from most marketers' point of view is a degree of nervousness around having folks from other parts of the business having access to your contacts. So one thing I want to get across to you is that there are different types of users that you can create within the platform. And as you create those different types of users, you can also allow them to do certain things. Sometimes it's easier to say, well, what do we not want them to do? It may be, for instance, they're unable to launch a campaign. They're unable to export contacts. They're unable to build forms or landing pages, but they can build emails. So there's a whole range of things that you can do, and there's a great deal of flexibility that's available to that. So don't think that simply giving access to other parts of the business to Eloqua necessarily means they might get in there and do some damage on those things that you're doing. Okay, so that can easily be managed. It's an enterprise solution, so it's designed from the ground up with these things in mind. Okay, so beyond the marketing team, how do we do that? And so those user types that I just talked about means that if you've got these expanded user groups, that you really can create a good experience for those people within the business who may also be able to use Eloqua, but also enrich the experience that you're delivering externally as well. So we had a client recently who does beautiful marketing. Visually, their content is fantastic. They put a lot of thought and work into making that experience a good one, and one that is very much on brand in relation to what they do. But as they kind of looked over the fence to some of their colleagues internally, they had another platform that was delivering emails that were just, well, by comparison, were just terrible. And they were like, you know what? We need to take this brand experience beyond our marketing comms and move it across the business. And so we're able to help them go through a process of increasing the look and feel, enhancing the look and feel of those various comms. In some cases, with access to Eloqua, in other examples, by looking at other Oracle platforms that are used as well, that might deliver emails more on a customer focus, more than a marketing focus. But there's no reason from a branding point of view why they can't be the same. So then if we look about the experiences you're trying to deliver, are we really trying to create a VIP experience? We're looking to create a better experience for staff in relation to their engagement and the way the brand communicates with staff internally. All of those things can really be enhanced if you think about what you've got available within Eloqua to help do that. So that whole group can be helpful, or you can help that group, I suppose. Again, your focus is here with customers, typically in prospects. As I said, that varies. That language is going to be different for everybody. But primarily, that's where marketing are focused. But all of these other people can benefit as well. from the quality of the output that you can get, and also the insight that you can gather from these different groups as well. Someone outside of marketing, for instance, HR, for instance, they might be really intrigued to actually understand that what I can actually have a staff newsletter and be aware as to who's opening and who's clicking and which content's actually performing better versus me just putting an Outlook email together and throwing it out the door. Okay, we can do better. Okay, so the key thing I wanted to get across there, as I mentioned earlier, was that you can control everything. And what you don't want them to do, as I said, is generally the easiest way to make that happen. One of the time consuming aspects, I suppose, is from an Eloqua point of view, is the building of the email. And I'm sure if you're doing this on behalf of colleagues throughout the business, you may go through a process of building it, you send them a test, they provide you feedback, and then that process potentially goes backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards. I think you would agree that the design editor within Eloqua is pretty intuitive. And if you think about some good templates and maybe really good use of blocks, there's ways that you could make it a lot easier potentially for the HR department or finance or whoever it may be, corporate communications, whoever it may be, to potentially build their own emails. And maybe that's where you leave it. Let them build the emails. You kind of take care of the rest, maybe campaign canvas, segment build, those sorts of things. But there's certainly an opportunity to save some time from your point of view and give them a little bit more control over what they're doing and enhance their experience. Okay, so that was, I just wanted to give you some thoughts there, really just kind of stretch your thinking a little bit about the application of Eloqua and how maybe it can be taken a little bit more broadly across the organization. The main reason we're here today is to talk about creating a little bit more fun and some engaging registration experiences. So let's dive in and have a look. So, what can fun look like necessarily? So, at the end of the day, we all know it's pretty much you get an email out the door, people fill in a form, then you might send them a reminder, obviously a confirmation, but pretty much it repeats. But if you could break it down into three core areas, I would suggest it's pretty much invitation and confirmation emails. It's then reminders. And in this context, I mean reminders to attend the event. So reminders are only sent to people who have not yet registered. And then on the day at the venue. So again, keeping in mind our focus today is more in-person events. So the invitations go out, and you may send multiple invitations to people, and you can use or you can control that experience based on who opened the first one, who has registered, who hasn't, and so on and so forth. So you get that. That's the campaign canvas. Then you'll present people a registration page and a form on that page, and probably an event confirmation page as well. And one of the most basic things we can do there, obviously, is add to calendar. Is one of the nicest ways to do that. You hopefully experience that when you register for the user group each month. Other things you can do there, if we look at it from an in-person event, is you may or may not be aware, but you can simply grab some code from Google Maps. So Google Maps will provide you, just type in the location of your event, whatever it might be, and Google will give you the code you need. All you have to do is copy that code, come straight over to Eloqua to the landing page, drag in the code piece, paste the code, and shazam, you're done. It's easy. So that can be a nice way to do it. In the old days, before that was available, I used to do screenshots of a Google map and then try and drop that, and not try, but did drop that in. It was okay, but it wasn't, people couldn't engage with it. They couldn't then click on it and plan their trip and so on and so forth. So much nicer way to do that. Obviously, the confirmation email goes out. Now, then reminders. So reminders are a critical part because reminders are key to getting people to attend, especially if it's not for, or if it's a complimentary event, there's no fee involved. You've got to get people to, or get bums on seats, I suppose is the expression. So you may mix up your reminders with a few emails. Maybe we're a week away, we're a day away, and then maybe on the day you mix it up with some SMS reminders as well. Now, of course, you can control all of that from the campaign canvas. Let's move to the day of the event. So now it's the day of the event, and you may decide that popping an SMS out to people is a good idea. Maybe it's an hour before the event, something fun like, hey, the champagne's on ice, the nibbles are ready, the food's are being prepared. So get yourself ready, tidy up your desk, and let's go. Find a cab, get a train, get a bus, whatever it might be. So How can we make each of these steps a little bit more fun and engaging? I've got some examples here I want to show you in just a moment. But the registration page, as you know, being a landing page, can be highly configured, right? So we can use dynamic content on there, we can adjust images, we can use personalization, making sure we address people by name. Functionality with the form, of course, enables you to have that pre-populate in many instances, but the form is where we can potentially kick in with a little bit of this fun idea. And that fun idea is maybe asking some questions that could enhance the experience overall and sort of delight and surprise a little bit in relation to what we're going to do. I'll expand on that here in just a minute. Now, the confirmation page. Now, the confirmation page, again, it doesn't have to be static. It can vary, and it may vary based on the questions you ask. Now, of course, if this is maybe it's a series of national Christmas party events that you've got happening across the East Coast. And so, depending on which location people register for, we can obviously deliver a slightly different experience on those confirmation pages, as well as the confirmation emails. So, all of those things can be tailored based on the responses that you get from people when they register. The SMS is also good because the SMS enables you to be short and sharp, but keeping in mind you can also include URLs in the SMS. So that's another great application for something simple like a Google map, for example. So take the Google code that you get, or not the code, sorry, the URL that you would get from Google under the share function within Google Maps. I generally shorten them, otherwise they look crazy long sitting in the SMS. So you can just shorten them using a shortening tool of some sort. But there are other things you can do, keeping in mind that SMS can be a two-way construct. So it might be a last chance for people to confirm, just confirming you're attending today, yes or no. When you arrive, would you like a beer, a red or a white wine, or a juice, potentially? So you can capture that information. Now, of course, you have to respond to that information as well. And that's easy. That information is instantaneous. But yes, you've got to have that ready when the person arrives. So on the day as well, SMS can be another really valuable tool. So several years ago, we were supporting a client as they were running, it was a big internal conference. Largely, it was an opportunity for the marketing team to convey to the sales team kind of everything that was going on over the past year and what was planned for the next year. And what we had done was we had worked out the delivery of an SMS to take place about 5 or so minutes into the presentation from the CMO. And I'm afraid I cannot remember exactly what we offered, but it was something in the lines of, so as the CMO was starting their presentation, everybody's phone went off, which was kind of funny because they'd asked everybody to turn their phones off, right? Or at least put them on mute. So we quickly learned not everybody puts them on mute. But in this case, it was kind of fun because the message was from the CMO. And so I think there was something about, it was something the CMO wanted them to look at specifically because outside of the main conference room were all sorts of different stalls from different departments and parts of the business, etc. And so I think it was a call to action to go and visit. And I think they got something from memory, probably a piece of merchandise or something. I can't quite recall. But that's just one fun example of how you can potentially move with some SMS to do something a bit more fun and a bit more engaging. And keep in mind, as I said, though, it is a two-way street. So you can make it a little conversational if you wanted to in that process as well. It just requires a little bit of creativity. Now, the other thing is QR code check-in for events. So depending on the size of the event, and it may well be irrelevant, it could be 15 people or it could be 1,500 people attending an event. We have a tool. You may have seen some of those slides I put up earlier in relation to events and QR code check-in. So we have a tool that we've created, consider it an app potentially, that as Eloqua produces the confirmation email, it loads a unique QR code into that email as a JPEG. It all happens automatically. And that confirmation email is sent to that person. Now, on the day, when they arrive at your event, all of the marketing team just need their smartphones with a QR code reader, no special app, nothing else, and they can simply scan the person in. Now, if somebody hasn't registered, they can then go over to the registration desk, which is great. But for those people who have actually pre-registered, they almost get like a bit of an express check-in process, okay, through the QR code. And the nice thing is, from your point of view, you're not playing around with name tags and I mean, how many times have we done this, right? Everybody goes in the room, then you look at the leftover name tags, you shuffle them all in place, you take a photo, and they're your no-shows, right? Well, that whole process is now fully automated. You don't have to worry about that. Eloqua will be able to tell you exactly who attended because they checked in with their unique QR code. So if that sounds interesting, please reach out to us. As I said, Adrian's on the line, so have a chat to him, and I'm sure he'll be happy to give you a buzz and walk you through that. There'll be information on the blog post as well, so you'll be able to see that there. So I wanted to give you some ideas, some opportunities to do a little bit of thinking. Okay, so the concept of a microsite in the context of your event is a really good idea. Okay. So instead of just a single page, you may consider something like a microsite, which helps you think about the event as a process. And the process isn't just the registration. That's just one part of it, which is our focus today, but it's part of a much larger process. And it's all about the promotion. It's all about the invites, the actual registration, then on the day, what happens. And let's not forget post event as well. All of those things are critically important. Now, you experience this a little bit with us each month when you register for the user group. And if you've got two screens where you are right now, or you can squish me up into a corner, if you go to a browser and just type in myeloqua.com, you'll arrive at our microsite. And so you may or may not have noticed each month when you register for the user group, the confirmation page that you see each month is unique to that month, but it's actually woven into the microsite. So from that confirmation page, you can add the calendar, but then you can also go to the homepage or learn more or need help or connect, etc., those sorts of things. So the nice thing about the microsite is it really helps you provide a communication platform that can be used throughout the event, through that promotion, the invitation, registration on the day, etc. And now, because it's Eloqua, you can hyper personalize it, right? You can address people by name. You can use dynamic content. There's a whole range of different things you can do. We've created some amazing microsites for clients in the higher education sector around their open days. Many of you probably would have been to university, and you know what open days are like. They're big. Okay, there are lots of people. There's lots of lead time. And let me see who's on the call today. Yeah, so I'm sure some of you on the call today have built these experiences, and you know how big they are. And so a microsite can be a really great way to act as a central communication point. Doesn't matter what the event is, but it can be really, really helpful in that process. Okay, so have you tried any of these before? Now, these are just kind of some fun, and you might argue maybe a little bit silly, but today's all about trying to make some fun, right? So, what if you were to ask people at the point of registration what their preferred coffee choice was? And imagine if when they arrived, you were able to give them a voucher or whatever it might be to go and get their particular coffee, or even if you're that organized, my gosh, have their coffee ready for them. That one could be a bit of a struggle. You don't know when they're going to arrive. But anyway, maybe selecting their preferred merchandise. So if your company is kind of cool with loads of different types of merchandise, maybe at the point of registration, you could ask them what their favorite piece of merchandise is and have some fun with that one. Asking if they'd like an SMS reminder. Now, you get that every month with us. We ask you every month if you'd like an SMS, so that's an easy one. Dietary requirements is always a great one. It's a simple thing to ask, and it can give people the control over their own experience, etc., and making sure they feel welcome on the day. Travel choices can be another one, depending on the type of the event. What is the event that you're hosting? We had one example of a client here in Australia, a law firm. They were doing an offsite conference for their partners within the firm. And it was a big event. And I think it went over a few days. And there was a sort of a flagship event or a signature event that they were running inside that period. And there were, I think, 4 of them. And so at the point of registering, the partners had to select, they want event 1, 2, 3, or 4. And so then that process flowed through on the day in relation to their registration, and obviously some of the follow-up communications that they received, etc. All those things factored into then their personalization as they went through that process. So that seamless experience from communicating and promoting to registration to then the experience on the day at the event, all of that information is helpful, and you can store all of this data either on the contact, or probably the best option is a custom object. Would be a smarter way to do it. The other thing that was interesting with the law firm was with some of those events, I think the four of them I said, some of them were limited in numbers. Okay, so that's why they had to capture numbers so that they could make sure that they didn't overpromise with some of the partners. Now, something you may want to also consider, which is maybe a little bit more forward thinking, would be asking people maybe what interests them most. And you could give them a list of whatever. And here's an example of just some things you could offer. Now, these things you're offering may well focus or be a part of what your company or organization does as a business. You may sponsor a theater company, you may sponsor the ballet, you may be soccer, football, rugby, whatever it might be. F1 car racing, we all know Oracle loves that one. Oracle also loves sailing. So these are good questions. So if you can get that information from people and store it, it's good to be able to think about what's coming ahead over the next 12 months from your various big events that you might be running. And that way you can invite the right people based on their level of interest. Okay, so let me jump into Eloqua, and I just wanted to show you some examples. So this is an event that we ran during COVID, and this was a webinar. And as you would imagine, during COVID, well, there were really no options but to do that. So the event was a webinar, as I said, and it was pretty simple. We emailed people out. We asked them to respond with an RSVP, yes or no. And then based on their response, we also needed to know where they were in the world. So in this case, it would have been Australia or New Zealand, largely for that particular audience. And depending on their response, different things happened next. If they said RSVP no, that's fine. They got a thanks for letting us know. Sorry, you can't make it. We'll be in touch later. However, if they said yes and they said they were in Australia, then they arrived at this page. And so here we said to them, hey, look, you're not quite done. Just there's one more step before you go. And so what we wanted to do in this scenario was deliver a hamper to these folks to enjoy during the webinar. Because we had that point, up until that point, we had been doing a range of events, usually of an evening, sort of after work type of scenario, just drinks and nibbles, etc. So we're trying to extend that same concept, but in a virtual context. So we said, which hamper would you like delivered? And you can see here, we've offered sweet hamper with a bottle of red or a bottle of white, a savory hamper with a bottle of white or a bottle of red, or I'm okay, I have my own cellar. No one selected that option from memory. But so they make their selection. And once they make their selection, the other thing that we had to do, as you would imagine, because we had to courier all these items out to people, we had to obtain their information. And so they're able to give us, in most cases, it was home address details. And we also asked them if they'd like an SMS reminder. So that was just one thing that we did. And now you'll notice that was a two-step process. The reason for the two-step process was we felt it was just way too much information to put on this screen. Plus, if the person said no, they weren't able to attend, well, they didn't really need to see all the information on the next screen anyway. It was kind of overkill. So in this case, what we've done is the confirmation page for that form is, in fact, another landing page with another form. That's fine. You can do that. It's easy to do. So, and that captured all the right information that we needed. Now, another example I wanted to show you, this one is not an event per se, but I want to show you the mechanics of how you can do these things in Eloqua. And I've just made some notes here, which I'll show you to make it a bit easier. All right. Okay, so first of all, what are you offering? And it could be anything. I said, merchandise could be one thing. It could be asking people which of the four signature events they're going to in that example I shared with you. In this particular one, we were asking people what their favorite beverage was, which is quite a broad description, right? And you can see we have quite a few beverages sitting here. So once you work out what you're offering, you then need to get it into a pick list, okay? Because you need to be able to provide people with a way to select it from the form. And so you can see this is quite an extensive pick list that we've got here. And what we've done is made sure that the option names are written in such a way that I can use them in a field merge because I want them to make sense when I drop them into a field merge. So making sure that they make sense, as in don't use codes and those sorts of things, because you can't then field merge them because they're kind of useless as a code, right? So we want to make sure it makes sense to people. And so once you've done that, you create your pick list. We then need to go through a process of adding your pick list to a form. And in this particular example, this particular campaign was asking people to opt in essentially, but it was a very specific campaign with some other objectives as well. And so all of our standard things, if we didn't know who they were, then we use some progressive profiling to control that to help reduce the size of the form. Then down here, you can see which beverage is your favorite. And so there's my pick list that you can see sitting in right there. Okay. And we also asked them which best describes their organization. And that list was, are they government? Are they B2B, B2C, or education? And then the key thing you've got to think about, and this is this is why I wanted to have these notes over here, was where will you store the data? Okay. So you capture this information in the form. Of course, it can stay in the form, but if it stays in the form, you can't do anything with it. It's just kind of sitting there more as an archive than anything else. So we need to do something with it. And we can either post it to the contact within Eloqua. And so this is, for instance, updating contacts with form data or update a custom object. And so in this example, you can see that's exactly what we've done. We've updated the custom object with form data. And specifically, we put in there the type of description of their organization, their beverage choice, and also there was a question there on choose your own adventure. Too much information for this. But yeah, so what we're doing is we're taking that information, now storing it on a custom object. And from the custom object, we're going to do a range of different things. And you can see that these people went in slightly different directions based on their responses using the conditional steps. Okay. So by using the conditional steps as well, we can drop people into different locations into a particular campaign. All right. So now that we've worked out where we're going to store our data, we need to play with the dynamic content. So here's the landing page in question that you can see. So people fill in the relevant form. We ask them what's their beverage of choice. This was the choose your own adventure question, and which best describes your organization. So there's quite a few variables there that you can see, and all of the different responses result in different outcomes as people progress through. And that's all done using the data from the custom object. All right, so here's the confirmation page. And on the confirmation page, we've now built our dynamic content. This dynamic content took a little while to build. Actually, it didn't take a while to build. It took a while to find all the right images. So in here, you'll see we've got all sorts of different images depending on what it is that people said was their preferred choice. Part of what we were trying to achieve here was to show people how you can, because these were marketers that we were talking to, was to show them that you can ask questions up front, gather that response, and you can immediately alter your experience based on the responses you get. And you may be very used to this, but I just want to let you know that there are some marketing platforms out there that can't do that. Okay, they cannot respond immediately based on information put in a form. They can't even put on a confirmation page, thank you, Derek, for registering today. They can't even do a field merge. That has to come later because the system is too slow. So we take these things for granted sometimes as Eloqua users. So that particular piece of dynamic content we use here to respond and to show people like a visual representation of what they did. And then also, so that's the default that you can see right there. And then we popped it into the email. So this is the confirmation email that the person would have received. And there's loads of dynamic content in here that's really altering the messaging and the experience that everybody gets. The banner is different depending on the individual and where they're from. And it's a very subtle change. This one is more substantial because it prioritizes what they told us and what they were interested in. And then down the bottom here, you'll see again. So that's actually the same piece of dynamic content that's been added here to the email that was added also to the landing page. Okay. So this is where you kind of need to use your imagination, I suppose, to think through, well, okay, so how can we apply all of this? Part of what I wanted to show you here was the mechanics. Okay. So just to recap, it all starts out with your pick list. The pick list is really the beginning point, and just think through carefully what these look like, because the values are the ones that merge back into the email. And I think it's, here. So you can see here, we wanted to show you how, based on your response of, and we put in quotes, it would have been orange juice or latte or whatever it was, you can use. And see how that I needed it in lowercase. So that's why the value is written in lowercase as well, because I knew I needed that piece of information to field merge into the email, versus this is what appears from the actual drop-down pick list when people select it from the form itself. So, so you go through all of that process, pick lists, work out where you're going to put the data. The form is going to be your friend. In that case, the form will direct the data to wherever you need it to go. And in most cases, with these more obscure things that we're kind of capturing about people, probably a custom object is the most obvious choice to do that. Build out your relevant pages so that your forms can display the relevant information. So you can see here, the choices are shown in proper case. Okay. So that's the difference between those two things on the pick list. Then your confirmation page, using the information that you've gathered to present different information to people. In this case, the imagery was changing. We've also personalized it, as you can see there. And then the confirmation email. So there's a whole range of different things that you can play with, right? And to try and enhance the experience, have some fun with different questions, ask people different things, make it a bit more fun and engaging. Don't miss the opportunity to obviously grow the profile of the person. But in the context of what we're talking about today, it's about the silly season events that you'll probably be hosting and running, and making them a little bit more fun and a little bit more engaging for people at the same time. I promised you that I would show you this. So if you've got your phone with you, I'll share this with you as well when we finish here. But the QR code construct is a really cool one. And you can use that. As I said, it's basically an app that the team have developed that will drop in a unique QR code into the person's phone or into their confirmation email, which they can then access on the day. You can also flip it and do it the other way and have a QR code or multiple QR codes on site. So when people arrive, they just scan it themselves and they type in their email address, depending on which experience you wanted to deliver. Okay, I can't imagine why you couldn't actually do both. But yeah, so there's some options there to play with. All right, so release 24D is the last release for this year, and that takes place in November. Now, as luck would have it, the Oracle team will be announcing the features that we can expect in 24D at 2 a.m. our time, Sydney, this Friday. So I won't be watching it, but I will get the recording, and that will work nicely because I'll be able to get that information into the blog post for you as well for October. So we'll let you know what's happening there. The key thing we know is that Redwood will be your defaulted user experience when you log into Eloqua from release 24D around early to mid-November. If you're still not clear on Redwood and how to turn it on or how to access it, please scan that QR code that you can see on the screen. We had a webinar last Tuesday, and that was just an introduction to Redwood. I'll also give you access to the replay if you were unable to attend that session as well. So if you have any questions, though, please reach out and let us know. Now, our next episode will be in November, will be Tuesday, the 5th of November. I just have a sinking feeling that's Cup Day now that I say it out loud. I will revisit that and come back to you confirmation. I also wanted to make clear to you is we're going to move to 2 p.m. Sydney time. This caters a little bit better for our friends in the West and into parts of Asia as well. So for folks in Sydney, Canberra, Melbourne, it'll be 2 p.m. But by the time November rocks around, people, Brisbane will be an hour behind us. So daylight savings starts this coming weekend. Happy to stay around if there are any questions. But otherwise, thank you so much for making some time to be with us today. We appreciate your participation and have a wonderful week. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.